You can change the world. Learn from proven change makers from all walks of life. They'll show you how to raise money, invest for impact, and so much more. You can start small. Start today and never quit. You can change the world by strengthening your superpowers. Now, welcome to the Superpowers for Good show. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe. We are so fortunate today. We have with us Jim Kucher from the University of Maryland, Baltimore, and he is an inspiring leader who is working on social impact at the highest, most sophisticated levels. And so you don't want to miss this one. Stick around for this great conversation. Jim, welcome to the show.
Devin, thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure and honor to be here, and you're far too kind with your accolades, but be that as it may, it's good to be here.
Well, we're thrilled to have you and grateful that you'd make time. We're excited to partner with you on the Super Crowd Baltimore event coming up.
Indeed.
Just a bit now. That'll be March 21st. It's going to be a great event, and your support for that from the university has just been tremendous. We're incredibly grateful. Now, Jim, tell us about your program there at the University of Maryland, Baltimore.
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity. So I direct a graduate certificate in social entrepreneurship. Graduate certificate means, yes, you do need to have a bachelor's degree to start the program, but it's sort of a mini master's. It's 12 credits instead of the typical 36 credits that you would have in a master's. One of the reasons we did it that way is because a lot of the folks that are doing good work in social change already have various advanced degrees, master's in social work, sometimes an MBA, but they really need specific skills around what's unique about social enterprise. And it does have some unique aspects. So we designed a 12 credit program, 4 classes, 1 year, fully online, that runs you through the basics of what's different. It starts with sort of how innovation is different in a social setting. It then goes into how to develop your product or service in a way that takes into account not just what's going to sell, but what also the community will engage in. We then talk about marketing the program, and that's a very different thing in social enterprise because you have to market to your constituents, you have to market to your funders, and then you also have to market to the people that are buying your product or service, and those are each very, very different messages. And then we get into the part that I think is most close to the super crowd audience, and that is how you finance all of this. And our strategy there is that all money is good, and there are very different ways to bring money into the organization, but you have to blend them and you have to time them, and that gets rather complex. So that's the last question. That's the last course in the sequence. Again, fully online, able to be finished in a year. It's a great, neat little package that can really advance your skill sets, and we're real proud to be rolling it out. In fact, our first formal rollout event is the Super Crowd Baltimore event coming up on March 21st.
Well, we are really excited to have you participate in that event. It's really going to be a fabulous event for social enterprise folks. We've got an extraordinary program. Of course, having you there is going to be a real highlight because you bring, genuine expertise. A lot of us are, relying almost entirely on OJT, right? On the job training. And some of us as entrepreneurs, right? That training is just a matter of tripping and falling and learning from the experience.
Absolutely.
Right? And so you've got some real expertise, and that's what this program creates. Where did your passion for this come from, Jim?
Well, I've been an entrepreneur most of my life. I started my first company in college doing lighting and sound for rock bands, had hair actually to about here. And then I worked in a family firm for a number of years and built that up. I've had startups both as an entrepreneur and as an intrapreneur. I was one of the founding members of a brand new division of a financial services firm that is now doing about $1.6 billion in revenue. Went to the University of Baltimore to get an MBA, launched a technology company out of that enterprise. I've done startups in healthcare. I did a health insurance cooperative, but I was invited back to the University of Baltimore after I completed my MBA to launch their entrepreneurship program. And that's the first time I got a taste for social entrepreneurship as a unique endeavor. That was almost 20 years ago now, and it just got a hold of me in a very, very deep way for a lot of reasons. Some of them very practical, some of them very personal. I do honestly believe that social entrepreneurship and social enterprise is the last great hope we have for redeeming what's gone wrong in the capitalist system in this country. So I've been driving that effort now for almost 20 years, wrote a couple of books about it, and I'm honored to be able to help to try and train folks in those skills as they try to bring their ideas to life.
Well, you know, the work you're doing is profoundly important, and you make this great observation about capitalism. And as we look at poverty, one of my favorite things to look at. When I was born, uh, about 50 to 60% of the world's population lived in abject poverty.
Mm-hmm.
Today, that number is about 10%.
Yep.
And a key driver of that, I think, is capitalism. But
Mm-hmm.
capitalism tends to also perpetuate problems. And so,
Indeed.
what is it about social entrepreneurship that fixes some of what is wrong with our basic free enterprise system, at least as it's practiced in the world today?
My position is that there is absolutely nothing wrong with making money. The problem is when enough is enough and when enough is too much. I have a presentation that I've been using for years now around the basics of how to fix capitalism through social enterprise. And there's a slide that I have in that presentation that talks about mega yachts. And I use a line that's intended as a bit of a joke, but also very, very serious, which is the fact that is there anybody on the planet that really needs a 160-foot mega yacht? I mean, I don't know about you, but I could probably learn to get by with 140 feet. Those last 20 feet are just kind of excessive. So, it's that kind of mindset. One of the things that's happened, and I don't have great statistics on this at hand, but I know anecdotally, in this country, the wage gap has increased dramatically over the last 20 years, and CEOs are making a lot more money, and the working class isn't really making a lot more money. Yes, we have a great standard of living in this country, and you're absolutely right that abject poverty has been, for the most part, reduced, if not eradicated, around the globe. But, when the president of the company is making several hundred times more than the lowest paid worker, something is out of balance there. And again, I don't begrudge people the opportunity to make money. I don't begrudge people the opportunity to earn money off of their great idea and their great execution. But the key difference in social enterprise is that it's not the fact that you don't earn money, it's what you do with it afterwards. So the balancing act, and this gets really interesting economically, the balancing act in an effective social enterprise is that you use the profit that you have honestly earned as a way to offset what might otherwise need charitable support. So in a traditional nonprofit, all of the support comes from charitable sources, whether they're individual donors or grant makers, often from the government as well, but still it's charitable money. It doesn't expect a financial return. Capitalist systems obviously expect a financial return. The difference in a social enterprise is that financial return goes to reduce your dependence on the more charitable sources of income. Doesn't mean you don't get those sources at all. Again, all money is good money. It just means that you have a balanced portfolio of income sources that can allow you to address the social impact without having to be completely dependent on traditional charitable sources.
Yeah, I think that's a great distinction to make. And I think one of the realities that we deal with as well in society is that we have long disadvantaged through a variety of systemic means. Some of them are not obvious, they're subtle, but they are there. And some of them are designed to be subtle, right? To create difficulties for diverse founders. And it seems like there's an opportunity using social enterprise finance, you know, insights to support diverse founders as well. How do you think about that?
That's a great question, and it is absolutely a great way to do it. And in particular, some of the work, Devin, that you're spearheading in the crowdfunding movement, because it releases small amounts of money from individuals. So, traditional investing, whether it's venture capital or large scale grant making, is still very much a lot of money controlled by a very few people. And that can be problematic for any number of reasons. But when you get into situations where, regular folks are able to put money into something, that can help a lot. And it can also help to overcome a lot of those scenarios. The really interesting thing, though, is that, this is the way it used to work. Before Adam Smith and before large scale industry and before a lot of the innovations that we brought to bear. And again, they are great innovations. I am very, very happy with my smartphone. I enjoy air conditioning. I appreciate indoor plumbing. These are all great things that have happened because folks have had the spirit of innovation. But if you go way, way back, it really was your friends and your family and your local community that, gave you the money to buy the next cow or the next chicken on your farm. And so seeing that come back, I think really does spread that and go a long way towards leveling the playing field in terms of social disparities that do exist in traditional investing and even in traditional grant making.
Yeah. And you see some of that in Baltimore, I think. This is, I think, what we would describe as a minority majority community, right? Where,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
so
It's a
you
majority
see
Black community, no question.
you see in stark relief some of the challenges associated with the systemic challenges that people have faced. Uh, I wonder if you could comment on kind of what you see there. I know there are some folks that are a little skeptical that there really is a systemic history to the challenges we see in communities. You see it, I think, up close and personal in a way that, I grew up lived most of my life in Salt Lake City, Utah, and we have a Black person or two, and I've met both of them, and they're great people, but it's a different experience than you've had.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why I live in Stockton now, which is another minority majority community, more diverse than Baltimore. But tell us a little bit about what you're seeing there.
Well, I have to defer to an absolutely brilliant colleague on this regard. There's a gentleman here in Baltimore by the name of Lawrence Brown, who teaches at a sister institution at Morgan State University. And Lawrence has done fantastic research and published a book on it. And his basic theory is the white L and the black butterfly. And he's done amazing work tracking the racial wealth gap and the social disparity gap. And the L that he refers to actually is a demographic line that you can trace, which is where the majority of the white folks in Baltimore live. And it's straight down one of the main streets in the city, known as Charles Street. Gets to the Inner Harbor, if you know your Baltimore geography at all, and turns east towards Johns Hopkins Hospital. And then on the east side and the west side of the city are where most of the Black neighborhoods are. And he has done a brilliant job of overlaying any number of social disparities, be they health, be they economic disparities, be they home ownership. And every single one of them lays almost perfectly directly over those racial demographics. It's just an amazing piece of work. And he's actually now working on documenting the history of redlining in Baltimore. Baltimore has a little bit of a nefarious past in that it is known as the city that literally invented redlining. And he's now been able to document that. He has documents from the federal government showing that the Federal Reserve was teaching bankers how to underwrite mortgages based on racial demographics. It's just amazing work. So yeah, Baltimore is a textbook for this. But I also think that Baltimore, because of that, is a textbook for how this can be fixed. And I've been sort of pointing out these four things for a number of years, and they are that if you're going to design a petri dish for social innovation and social impact, you couldn't come up with a better city than Baltimore for several reasons. The first one is we have a higher than average percentage of well-educated folks. Our percentage of folks with advanced degrees is higher than most communities. There is substantial wealth in Baltimore, despite what people may think from the outside. The difference here is that it's quiet money. I grew up outside of New York City. New York City, the wealth is right out there for everybody to see. You see it, folks flash their wealth all the time. Baltimore, they don't do that, but it's here. We also have a community that's big enough that you can build a network, but it's small enough that you can access that network and develop relationships. And it's also small enough that those networks keep you honest. Because not only are you going to build a relationship with someone that can help you do work or build a business or make an investment, but you're going to see that same person at the grocery store or at your house of worship. So there's a way that sort of keeps people honest there. And then last but not least, of course, we have more than our share of deeply entrenched social problems. So there's a lot for folks to work on. So I think not only is it a city that's got a lot of those issues, but it's also that those issues make it an ideal place for social innovation to happen. And we're happy to be a small part of that.
Well, it is just a fantastic petri dish. You've described it so well. And you talked a little bit about redlining. And I think there are a lot of folks alive today who have no idea that the federal government guided this practice. They don't even know what redlining is. It's the practice of blocking banks from lending under federal rules.
It literally
lending in Black communities.
It literally comes from drawing a red line on a map and saying on this side of the line you can sell people mortgages, on that side of the line you shouldn't because they're bad risks.
And
the assumption is that they were
in the early laws. It was expressed. Written down, expressed. That's because there are Black people there, right?
Yep.
And this is post World War II. We're not talking about the 1800s. This is post World War II, when a lot of us were alive. So this is
absolutely.
Those are the kinds of systemic problems I think sometimes people don't appreciate, that really impoverished whole communities. And so I'm glad, to have you on the show to talk about solutions. We're excited for Supercrowd Baltimore. Listen, we got to take a break here. When we come back, we're here with Jim Kucher, who is a professor at University of Baltimore, Maryland, and we're talking about University of Maryland, Baltimore. Sorry, Jim, I'm going to get fired.
Never.
There are all these universities in the Maryland, Baltimore area have similar names. And so it's important to get it right. University of Maryland, Baltimore. And we're thrilled to have him here. We're going to come back in a few minutes. We'll talk to him about his superpower. Stick around. You don't want to miss this. Join us at Supercrowd Baltimore to connect with community-focused business leaders and investors working to support diverse founders, social entrepreneurs, and community builders. Learn how to raise money from the crowd and how to invest like a pro. March 21st at the B&O Rail Museum. Register today at thesupercrowd.com.
You can get in on the ground floor to help fix the climate crisis for as little as $100. Pause now to scan the QR code to get started or visit s4g.biz/raisegreen. You can be a green at Raise Green.
Welcome back, everyone. We're here with Jim Kucher from the University of Maryland, Baltimore. We're excited to be talking with him. He's so incredibly accomplished. We're going to be talking with him now about his superpower. Jim, as you think about your incredible career, all the great things you've done, the difference you're making in the world, what do you see as your superpower?
Well, before I answer that, I do want to know, do I get a cape?
Absolutely. Excellent. I'll deliver it in Baltimore.
Excellent. So thanks for letting me have a little fun there, Devin. It's a really interesting question, and it's really something that I don't think about a lot. But I would have to say that the thing that I think I'm particularly good at, and the thing that I think other folks that do work like mine maybe aren't as good at, is that I can identify the difference between a good idea and a good idea that actually works. And it's an interesting challenge in innovation to have that dichotomy. I tell folks all the time, good ideas are a dime a dozen. I've had several already today. I'm sure you have as well. I'm sure our viewers have had several good ideas about things that are wrong, things that need to be fixed. But how to execute on that idea is a very, very different endeavor. It's much more mechanical. It's much more pragmatic. Sometimes, frankly, it's a lot less fun, but it has to do with both the operational challenges of, okay, so how would you make that happen? And also the financial challenges of how would you get that paid for? And it's a really interesting conundrum. And it's one of the places that I think I have a balanced perspective that I frankly don't see a lot in the field. So if I do have one, I think I would claim that.
That is a profoundly important superpower. Can you think of an example when you deployed that and had a good outcome to just illustrate what you've done?
I can think of several times where I had a positive outcome that may not be something that most of the world would define as success, because one of the best things about performing that analysis is that you don't get pulled into something that can cause you harm. We launched a technology company in the late 90s. I say we, my wife and I. That actually came out of my work in my MBA studies at the University of Baltimore. We licensed to federal technology. Everything was going quite well. We were getting some early investors. And then somebody flew a plane into the side of a building in Lower Manhattan. And as you may recall, when 9/11 happened, all the capital markets dried up. Happily, we had the good sense to realize that that was a fatal blow to the business and get out with our skin mostly intact. So, it's more, I think, about recognizing when something won't work and being able to pull away from it rather than sort of forcing it on. The entrepreneur, the sort of mythical entrepreneur, is this person that we think of with this incredible drive and this incredible push that can just sort of, literally run through brick walls. And, I've tried to run through a brick walls. The brick wall doesn't move. Your head hurts, but the brick wall doesn't move. So recognizing, maybe you go around the brick wall, maybe you go over the brick wall, maybe you go under the brick wall, but maybe also sometimes you say, that wall is impenetrable. I'm going home. And I think
Yeah.
the recognition of going home really is the thing that I would claim as more success than anything else, as opposed to, oh gosh, yeah, I did this feasibility study and it turned into this $1 billion business. I don't have a $1 billion business that I can claim, quite frankly.
Yeah. Well, if you were to give people one tip to help them be more like you in this way, what would be the tip?
Simple arithmetic. There's a thing in business called a profit and loss statement. There's a thing in business called a balance sheet. And the great thing about those two tools is you can do them on an Excel spreadsheet, on a laptop. I've recently become involved in working with faith-based communities. As you may know, there's a lot of churches closing, and there's an open question these days about what do we do with these buildings. There's a lot of real estate investors looking at that property, and there's a great phrase in real estate investing which says, does the project pencil out? And what that means, quite frankly, is does the math work? Is this something there, if we make an investment, we see a way clear to get our money back and maybe make a few bucks along the side? And I think that's the thing that entrepreneurs don't always do. The other thing I would say is recognize that you may not be exercising your passion. There's a great book called The E-Myth that talks about how an entrepreneur starts a bakery and a year later realizes they haven't baked in months. So if you're doing this because you have passion for an art or a craft, that may not be the right reason to actually launch your own enterprise.
That's a great point. Jim, thank you so much for being here. Quickly, how can people get in touch and learn more about the University of Maryland Baltimore program you run?
Great question. So my email is jkucher, Kucher, at umaryland.edu. If you go to the University of Maryland Baltimore website and find the graduate school, you'll see the social enterprise certificate listed among the programs there. You can click on that and get more detail. There's a contact form there. Or you can come to Baltimore on the 21st of March and say hello in person and meet both myself and the recruiting team and get more detail that way. We also have other events coming up that we'll be feeding out through all of your social media channels. We thank you for your support there. But yes, absolutely.
All righty. Thank you so much for joining us. We wish you
Thanks
every
for having me.
success. All righty. Let's do some good.